Let's understand the Syria conflict and the refugee crisis. But first, we need to know what really happened.
In March of 2011, Syrian manifestants filled the streets to demand the liberation of political prisoners and protest against the Assad regime. The security forces responded with violence and killed several people in the process. This is what lit the flames of war. Before the social tension, the government announced institutional reforms, but this wasn't enough to stop the critical voices. While the pressure grew, the regime oppositors organized. The Syrian National Council was founded as an oppository coalition.
In February, the government bombed the city, which was controlled by the rebels. In April, the government agreed to enforce a ceasefire, but the agreement didn't work. The opposing army didn't stop in attack in the city of Damascus. They killed the Minister of Defense.
In March of 2013, the United Nations released disturbing data. More than 1 million of Syrian citizens had abandoned their homes and turned into refugees. 4 months later, the United Nations released another number. The number of deaths of the conflict was over 100,000. In August of that same year, an analysis of the inter-services discovered that an attack with chemical weapons over the city has killed hundreds of persons, and the government seems like the guilty.
In January of 2014, negotiations started in Geneva to reach the peace in Syria, but they didn't work. In May of this year, the forces of the regime captured the city of Homs. At the same time, a new force appears: ISIS. This group captures great portions of the land, killing civilians and soldiers by equal. They show a video where they decapitate an American journalist. This for sending a message to the world and mostly the United States.
In 2015, ISIS dominated the titles of the world news as more countries joined the fight in Syria. In May of that year, ISIS took the city of Palmyra, that contained constructions older than the Islamic State, and blew them up. In September, Russia joined by bombing ISIS. After the terrorist attacks in Paris, France compromised to destroy ISIS. At the same time, the refugee crisis struck Europe with more than 4 million people. In the summer of 2015, Europe experienced the highest influx of refugees since the Second World War. The real problem was that the Syrian population was trapped between the regime, rebel groups, and the religious extremists. 4 million have fled the country. The vast majority of them reside now in camps in the neighboring countries, who are taking care of the 95% of the refugees, while the Arab states of the Persian Gulf together have accepted Syrian refugees, which has been called very shameful. The conflict in Syria is a civil war where lots of countries are involved right now. This war is the reason of the refugee crisis, and the citizens of that country are the most affected ones, so we should help them or understand their situation.
Created using Powtoon.